Hi, my name is Amber Roberts and I'm a Maryville College graduate. I graduated in 2014 with a degree in English literature. This particular project that Impressions is doing is really near and dear to my heart because I was the editor-in-chief of Impressions for the 2013 to 2014 academic year. It was actually this edition right here. And it was the 40th anniversary edition, and since it was such a significant anniversary, we really tried to get a lot of alumni submissions, and they came in from not only around the nation, but several that were international as well. And some of those alumni submissions were some of my absolute favorites to go in that particular edition. And so it is really crazy to me that I'm coming back as an alumna of the college to read to you today. So the piece that I'm going to be reading is called Learning to Drive. I wrote it as part of a class assignment for Kim Trevathan's fiction class, which I took in my junior year. It was published in volume 39 for the 2012 to 2013 academic year, and it won the prose award for that year. This particular piece, as I look back on it, really was significant in my development as a writer, because I remember it being the first time that I really gave myself permission to draw from my family history and draw from my personal experiences without feeling the need to be a biographer or a historian. During that fiction class, we had a visit from Charles Frazier, who wrote the novel Cold Mountain, and he really made an impression on me when he talked about that novel being inspired by some of his own family history, and how he had to kind of move past any offense that his family might have in him not sticking to the facts and just kind of allowing the story to develop as it would. And so I think in the course of writing this particular piece, I was drawing from a setting that my family knows well, and the two main characters are based on my grandparents, but I also kind of allowed myself to use that family history as a springboard to develop the story. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and read it for you. Break, break, oh my God, Jimmy said. It was 3 days after her marriage, and 15-year-old Irene was careening towards the side of a cliff. She had asked her new husband, Jimmy, to help her to learn to drive. He had agreed, albeit reluctantly. Neither his mother nor sisters had learned to drive, but he figured it might come in handy one day to have a wife that could drive herself to the grocery store and church. It was raining slightly, not a downpour, but just enough to make the wheels of the old Buick stick in their clay yard. Their tin-roofed house sat precariously high on the side of Clinch Mountain. She could see it in the left side mirror, leaning as though she had turned the whole world on its side. Jimmy reached over, grabbing for the emergency brake with his left hand. The gold-plated ring shone on his finger. They both watched in horror as the stick broke off in his hand. He had it lifted in midair as though it was a scepter and he a king. As she sat paralyzed with her right foot pressing the brake pedal down to the floor of the truck, and her husband staring stupidly at the emergency brake, Irene's mind flashed back to her father and his refusal to let her get married. During their 6-month courtship, Jimmy would drive down the mountain to the valley and park this very car in her front yard, facing the house. Irene's father would stand in the doorway, hawk-like, watching them as they sat in the front seat discussing the weather and the condition of crops. Out of the corner of her eye, she had always seen her father, his shadow illuminated by the kitchen lights. Even in the shadow, she could see the hollows of his eyes, the chemo gradually winnowing him away until he was yellow and as fragile as a sparrow. He had begged her not to get married, saying 15 was too young, Jimmy too young and too poor. She had not had the heart to tell him about the glimmering life in her abdomen, each day pressing its terrifying eternal circle against her inside until her body expanded slowly, until she felt she inhabited the body of a stranger. Now, as she rapidly approached the side of the mountain, she was drowning in regret, its murky waters rising to choke out any hope that she might be clinging to. Even if they somehow survived the fall off the cliff, her father was gone, buried a month before the wedding. Her stepmother had gladly signed the papers, grateful to get her husband's favorite daughter out of her house so that she could experience a fuller, more satisfying grief, resting in the delusion that he loved her more than he had loved his first wife. The car bumped up and down as Irene sat silent in the front seat, as Jimmy scrambled around, trying to shift his leg over enough to push down the pedal on top of her foot. It seemed as though 1,000 little thoughts were speeding through her head. She should scream. She should pray for forgiveness. She should try to open the door. Could she survive the fall? Would Jimmy jump too? As the couple barreled ever closer to the edge of the mountain, a rush of wind broke the windshield. The scent of myrtle and pine seeped through the truck. The water rose to their knees, then higher, washing away the blood that was seeping from between her legs. From the darkness of the valley rose a memory from her childhood, the shrill, insistent screaming of an ambulance. Her father saying, "Hold on, just hold on." Thank you for listening.